All right. Hello, everyone. In this video, I'm going to share my discussion board reactions. And yeah, so we'll just get to that. It'll be kind of a brief video. So just a few thoughts on the theories. I really liked this discussion board because I think theory is fascinating personally, but I think it's really interesting of just kind of how students integrate theory in. So I have a few thoughts on that. So I'd strongly encourage you, and this is probably no surprise for some of you have taken classes from me in the past, that I'd strongly encourage avoiding any superficial level of, theoretical integration. So especially like when certain theories foundations don't align, it's kind of hard to merge those. Like it's not impossible, and I'll talk about that in a second, but just be really thoughtful. So for example, solution focused has a core foundation, based in postmodernism, based in like a positive psychological perspective, based in, social constructivism and the importance of language, etc. Uh, so like an experiential focus, so like a Carl Whitaker or Virginia Satir, they're going to view things a little bit different. So there's going to be some overlaps, but like the emotion focus, the present moment focus, the really depth of digging into the deep, emotional experience is just pretty different. Uh, than than the solution focus, and really experiential and humanistic is all about the relationship, so like really being in the present moment, creating a healing relationship. uh and that's really not the centerpiece of solution focused. So it can be easy to just kind of look at techniques and be interested in techniques from various theories and kind of make decisions about what's useful for clients based on, oh, this technique might be helpful, but your task is to understand why you're using that certain technique. How is it going to help in the long run at a core philosophical or theoretical level? So once again, I guess some questions. Can you like a theory, elements of a theory, without really resonating with its core? Personally, I think so, yes, because I do as well. But I think the major question to answer for yourself though is, how can I develop a solid core theoretical and like kind of philosophical basis for your counseling work, and then pull in techniques that align with that core? So if you, maybe if there's several elements of theories where they're not like completely disjointed, but you can find a way of finding unity inside yourself ultimately, of like, why do these approaches really connect for me? How do I see them not competing with each other, but just really adding and complementing each other? And then how can I pull theory, or excuse me, interventions that kind of honor that basis? Uh, so, and I'm taking the assumption, my bias is that our inner work and our inner perspective is essential to the counseling relationship. I think sometimes there's this idea that like, oh, we can just, you know, apply the counseling approach that this certain client needs based on their presenting symptoms. And I think a lot of people do that, but I see some limitations to that, because like you can't be everything for everyone. And ultimately you can't really fake an approach if it's really against your belief system. I think a lot of times the research on effectiveness, that's some of the limitations, like that researchers are trying to kind of fake it, so then they're not effective in it. So that it's showing that the one that they do believe in is more effective than the other because they're the ones providing the service. That's not necessarily a overgeneralization, or I guess maybe that is a little bit of an overgeneralization of all research, but that is some of the limitations of research that I've seen when they're like comparison between theoretical models. So anyways, just a few thoughts on theoretical integration. Uh, so a few of you addressed narrative. We actually didn't in your discussion board post for the fourth discussion board. Uh, we hadn't addressed that yet. Some of you, I think, read ahead and looked at it. I think some of you might maybe didn't read ahead yet, because it seemed like there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of that narrative is just telling stories, the family telling stories, and you weren't sure how that'd be helpful. But yeah, narrative's a lot more than just story time. It's there's this big, process of going through like recognizing what are the constructions. It's a postmodern kind of core philosophy underneath narrative as well, of kind of what is the construction, what's the story that's been constructed. Then you go through a process of helping them deconstruct the story and then reconstruct a new family narrative. And it's not individual narratives, it's like, what is the family narrative? So that's not necessarily a spoken story. Maybe for some it is, but a lot of times it's just like, what is that unspoken narrative that guides the family process. So maybe that gets back to unconscious. I guess I better be careful of using unconscious because that's a bit more psychodynamic, but maybe just unspoken, once again, unspoken stories, but they're kind of the central motivations underneath the behavior. So I think there is a lot more depth to narrative than, than the surface level stories. Although the surface level stories are usually give the entry points into that deeper narrative as well. Some of you addressed how, systems theory, you're really interested in systems theory. And yes, systems theory is more like the overall umbrella. And then each of the smaller theories that we've been addressing the last few weeks are underneath that system lens. So there is no one single like system theory for family counseling because all of the individual ones are under that umbrella of systems theory. So for example, experiential, the cognitive behavioral family approach, behavioral family, Bowenian, et cetera. Those are all under that umbrella of family systems. So just a bit of clarification there. So I probably said something like this before. I know some of you have been in my prac sections or internships, so you don't have to use solution focused in a school setting. I know it kind of makes sense based on the short term nature, but I just want to name that again. You don't have to. Maybe you'll feel some pressure to. Maybe that'll be the norm among a lot of colleagues or peers, which is, that might occur. But I'd encourage you to not pigeonhole. I guess that's my intent for saying this all is not feeling locked in that I must, because I'm in the school counseling track, I must choose solution focus. I must practice from that lens. Maybe at times you'll need to draw from that perspective, but I'd still encourage you to really go through that where I started, that deep, thoughtful process of what is my core of who I naturally am, and can I find a home in that, approach and be able to apply it to the school setting or the clinical setting or whatever setting that you're going to be working in. So I still think, settings, the context, certain agencies or certain schools might say, we need you to practice from X, Y, or Z. And sure, if you want the job, you'll have to do that. But, I think it's also something worthwhile to think about is like, do you want to have theory mandated to you? That was always kind of like a deal breaker for me personally, was saying nope. If like, even if I agreed with their perspective, if it was like you must do this, I was like no, because I don't want to be told that I must. I think that kind of speaks to the system to a certain extent, or could, so I guess that just put some alarm bells up for me. But once again, I just encourage you to go through the thoughtfulness, not feeling like you're pigeonholed into something. If solution focus really resonates for you though, and it really does align with your core, feel free. I'm not trying to badmouth solution focused at all, but it just seems that there's kind of an expectation that it must be the norm for school folks. So anyways, those are my final thoughts for at least for this wrap up video. The main last thing that I want to add is, I get that things are super busy, especially this summer, but it's really important, if you want to learn more about certain approaches, to go to the original sources. A lot of you shared great ideas of getting additional trainings and, watching more demonstration videos, but I think like either finding videos of some of the core, like if you're interested in Satir, listen to Satir speak, read her books, or read a book of hers when when you can carve out some time. I know that's short right now. Some of you might be cursing my name for even bringing that up. Read more books. But yeah, once again, the concept, go to the original sources. I think that can be really meaningful to deeply understand it. So those are my the last thoughts that I had for this wrap up video on the discussion board. I'll share a couple more videos on the chapters, as well as talk about the final exam in module 7. So thanks everyone.